Welcome to the Alaska Realtor live stream. My name is Jamin Goecker. I'm a realtor in South Central Alaska, and my mission is to help you to build an intentional and significant legacy for yourself by coaching you in real estate. And today, I'm actually very excited to be introducing you guys to kind of a local long distance legend, Matias Saari. He is a absolute stud of a runner, and let me go ahead and read off some of his credentials real quick here. So he has been doing running for quite a while now, with quite a long resume of kind of these longer mountain runs, really racing anywhere from about 8 miles to 100 miles, endurance events, kind of going over some of the most rugged terrain that you're going to find here in North America. He directs all the races all over the state, ranging from the famous Mount Marathon race, the Crow Pass Crossing, Kasugi Ridge, which is in view of Denali, by the way, and the Frosty Bottom Marathon. Previously, he directed the Tour of Anchorage ski and bike races, and he's a founder of the Northern Trails Running Series in Fairbanks, and he even wrote a book titled The Equinox, Alaska's Trailblazing Marathon. And currently, he works for the Alaska Sports Hall of Fame and Healthy Futures nonprofit. So, all that being said, yeah, we're definitely in for a big treat tonight. So, Matias, thanks very much for joining us.
Great to be here, Jamin.
So, we're going to go and just jump into our questions here that I have ready to go. People are going to cycle in, cycle out. That's how these live streams go. For those of you who are in the chat, by all means, make sure that you drop plenty of questions in the comment section so we can go ahead and get to those and get your questions answered directly live. And the live stream is always going to be just as good as the questions we get coming in from the comment section. So, yeah, make sure that you take advantage of the opportunity to have those answered. And without further ado, let's go ahead and just jump into this then. So, first question is really what brought you to Alaska in the first place? What's your Alaska story?
Yeah, dumb luck, I'd have to say. There was no Alaska dream growing up. I grew up in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan on Lake Superior in a little town called Marquette. And I went to Michigan State University and was getting desperate to find a job. Had a journalism degree and was applying to newspapers all over the country, and applied to the Ketchikan Daily News in Southeast Alaska like all the other ones. And that was the first job offer I got, and I took it. And really, it was the best thing that happened to me as far as discovering the outdoors, and really shaped my career for a while. So I'm really grateful that it was Alaska and not Alabama that offered me that first job.
Could be having a completely different story right now.
I'd probably be in Colorado or somewhere, but maybe not in Alaska now. So, and then that was 27 years ago, and here I still am, and no plans to leave. I really changed my whole lifestyle, discovered the outdoors, and running was a big part of that. I wasn't a runner growing up at all. Pretty active kid, mostly team sports, basketball, soccer, baseball, activities like that. Dabbled in a little bit of running, but wasn't on the high school cross country or track team or anything like that. And it wasn't until I moved to Fairbanks, actually after a few years in Ketchikan, that I started running.
So I guess backing up a little bit, what did you think about living in Ketchikan? Because that South Central Alaska, or I'm sorry, Southeast area is kind of its own little world. It's some people absolutely love it, and it's not everyone's cup of tea, though. So what did you think about living in Southeast?
Oh, I thought it was fantastic. It's pretty remote. You're on an island, 7,000 people, but you've got mountains, you've got the ocean. There were days that I would go kayaking and hiking on the same day, and just a quirky little town. Quite a bit of tourism that drives the economy, for the summer and fall, but then you get the town back for the rest of the year, and has a reputation for a lot of rain. Definitely did rain, but you could find some snow up high, and Because of the rain, you had a spectacular rainforest, which was really cool to explore too. So it wasn't a place I wanted to be forever, but it was a great introduction to Alaska. And, I spent 2.5 years there and then decided I wanted to stay in Alaska, but was thinking of going back to college. And at that point, the best options I thought were Fairbanks or Anchorage. And being a pretty sort of a small town kid at the time, I thought Fairbanks would suit me better. So that was my next stop in 1998.
So what do you think of Fairbanks, I guess the first year that you were there?
Fairbanks was great too. It was a little jarring, was a bit of an adjustment.
I was about
But,
to say southeast of Fairbanks
uh,
is, that's an adjustment.
yeah, I mean, I coming from upper Michigan on Lake Superior with the wind and the humidity, it can be really nasty. I mean, even now I'll go home to visit my parents and it'll be 10 degrees with the wind blowing and it feels way colder than Alaska ever did. Fairbanks, the saving grace was the dry cold, not a lot of wind, not a lot of humidity. And once you sort of hardened to it, got used to it, kept moving, it was totally manageable. In the summer, limitless daylight was a real bonus. The flip side of that, of course, is in the winter having very little light. So really made a point of just getting out for a few hours every day while we did have the daylight. And I lived up in the hills, so it might be 25 below down in town and fogged in like this ice fog, the car exhaust particles, just really nasty in town. But above that, you have, sorry, my dog is making some noise behind me. But yeah, you'd have the inversion temperature where the sun might be shining 25, 30 degrees warmer up in the hills. And that's where I lived. So that made it a lot easier to get out in the winter. And then, the summers, we deal with some mosquitoes, things like that for June, but for the most part, it's a pretty awesome place to live. And again, a really interesting people, and had the university there that brought in a lot of great folks, and just different, very different than Southeast Alaska, but neat in its own way.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, one thing that, something you just brought up a little bit, just the drastic changes in the sunlight in South Central, you'll get some of that. But I mean, once you're up in Fairbanks, you're only a couple hundred miles away from the Arctic Circle. So, I mean, I recently drove up to Fairbanks and back in the same day. And yeah, just it felt like there was a big difference in when the sun was setting. Like, it was felt like it was dark by around 4 o'clock or so. So, yeah, it's definitely some big differences up there for sure.
It's 3 hours and 42 minutes of daylight on the solstice, and maybe hour, another couple hours of usable light. So it's a challenge, but you get used to it, and you got to be willing to get out when it's dark out too. But it's not for everyone.
Yeah, it's a really hardy people who live up there. I mean, there's a reason that, I've noticed a lot of, long distance community here, at least most of them seem to have some kind of a connection to Fairbanks. So, I'm sure there's a correlation, not necessarily a causation, but it's definitely something I've noticed.
My biggest challenge, I think, in Fairbanks was eventually, at least, was the lack. We had hills there, but we didn't really have the mountains. You could see Denali off in the distance, um, but really it was a couple-hour drive to get into mountains to recreate in. Um, and ultimately, that's what pulled me to Anchorage in about 2010. By that time, I was really hankering to live in the mountains, and I've been coming down to South Central Alaska to race 3 or 4 times a year, which is a pretty long commute to drive 6 hours to do a race. And finally decided I needed a change. But Fairbanks treated me great for 10, 11 years. And
Yeah,
I still have a
no.
cabin there that I on 5 acres, and I've held on to that and still love to go up and visit 4 or 5 times a year. So
Oh, perfect. So I guess jumping right into here to the into the long distance running. So what is it that got you into long distance running initially? Because you didn't really have the track or cross country in high school, anything like that. So where did it come from?
Yeah, I guess just being open-minded to trying something new. A friend of mine invited me out to do the Granite Tours trail run. I think this was August of '98, maybe a month or two after I moved to Fairbanks. And I, I figured, well, 15 miles, I can cover that distance. I'm not a runner, but, I'll hike it if I have to. And jumped right in, sort of leap of faith. And it's not your average flat run. There's a big climb, a big descent, a lot of technical trail, a boulder field. And I was pretty shattered at the end of it. But that was sort of my introduction. Yeah, there wasn't a big build up where I was running with friends on trails. I just jumped into a 15-mile race and was intrigued after that and wanted to improve. But yeah, it wasn't exactly a textbook introduction.
Yeah, not necessarily. Most people too, they would be happy with just kind of doing it and saying they got the T-shirt, check the box, and they're good with it after that. But you definitely did stick with it. So, what were some of the things that you learned from that first race? Because, I mean, I'm assuming you probably didn't just nail it the first go around.
No, yeah, I learned I didn't know anything really, and I had a lot to learn. Um, yeah, I mean, I went out probably more ambitious pace than I should have. Thankfully, I didn't take any big falls or anything, but um, I didn't. I like gear. I didn't. I think I'd gone thrift shopping and picked up a pair of shoes at like a thrift store, and um, yeah, I was really just winging it. Thankfully, it wasn't a total disaster, and it didn't turn me off from the activity. And really, I was just intrigued to figure out what this is all about. And so I made some friends that were into running, really picked their brains, started getting out with them, and um, kn- knew this was something I wanted to pursue. And so I approached it with a lot more structure than I do now. I bought a sort of a guidebook on running, 600 pages, and read it cover to cover, and really just dove in. You know, kept a running log and had a training plan, and just sort of figured it out that way. It's a lot different than how I run now, but it took me a while to sort of get to a less structured plan. But initially, I needed that structure. I needed training partners and um, needed to sort of figure it out. And yeah, there's a lot to it, and you need to just sort of jump in and ask questions and make some mistakes and um, go from there.
Absolutely. So, a couple things. Number one, my battery is about to die, guys. I'm still here. I'll just be swapping out a battery if you see me suddenly go blank. So that's what's going on there. But secondly, after that first race, did you have any big goals or aspirations or any other big races you were wanting to start getting ready for, or were you really just feeling it out as you went along?
Yeah, I guess that first race, I mean, I was interested enough that I wanted to do it again. And coming up in September, I don't know, a month or 6 weeks later was the Equinox Marathon, um, which again, like I'd
Full
been running
marathon.
for a month, and most people are training for 4 months before they take on a marathon. So I don't really recommend that plan. I mean, I did have going for me is a fair amount of fitness. It wasn't running fitness necessarily, but I was pretty active, and I biked and I hiked and I just did things outside a lot. So while I wasn't really a runner, it was a big leap, but it wasn't totally off the couch. That said, that Granite Tours race was the longest training run I did, which is 15 miles. Most people want to get in a few 20 plus milers before they attempt a marathon. And the Equinox is not an easy race. It's got 3,500 vertical feet of climbing. It's sort of a hybrid trail and road race. So there's flatter road sections, but then there's also technical trail. There's a lot of climbing. There's some nasty descending that really pounds you towards the end. And I didn't know what I was doing still. I jumped into that and predictably went okay for like 16 miles, and then the wheels came off. I ran really hard down a nasty, steep, rutted trail descent and was lucky I didn't pop an ankle doing that. Got to the bottom of it, and within a quarter mile of that, I was cramping and walking. And I know it sounds like miserable, and it was, but I managed to gimp my way to the finish, and that it took a day or two to, as I'm having trouble descending stairs and really sore. And but then I was like, I now I really want to. That actually was fun, and I want to see what this is all about and truly figure out what I'm doing and take it to another level and actually train properly. So the Equinox
Yeah.
has changed my life. That was the first marathon I did, and ended up writing a book about it, and done the race about 20 times, and eventually won that race a few times.
Man, that's awesome. I mean, I don't think I've ever heard of anyone just jumping into a marathon after about a month's worth of training. And I don't know, maybe that, I mean, I came from like a college track and cross country background. And I mean, everything was pretty dadgum structured. So, I mean, my mind is kind of just being blown right now here, just jumping in and just kind of feeling your way along. That's awesome. So, did you have that moment in the marathon where you were questioning some life decisions while you were out there, though?
Yeah, I mean, I never thought about dropping out at that point. I was walking and running a little bit, and just um, I realized that I hadn't planned for it very well. But the Equinox is really special. There's spectators out there. There's people that are hiking it for fun. It's not all serious runners, and um, yeah, it was still fun, even within the misery. What we call type 2 fun. But I also recognize, I want to improve at this, and I really actually want to come up with a plan and learn what I'm doing and get better, because this winging it approach isn't sustainable, and I'm going to get hurt if I do that, and it's going to turn me off to the activity. So
Right.
the first two races opened my eyes to, okay, let's start doing it right.
Yep, absolutely. So we've got a question from the comments section here from Krista. So I have explored the Eagle Summit up there to watch the caribou herds and waited for wolves to show up in those areas as an observer of large carnivores. Is that road is that road paved in the winter? So I guess that's more of a you question.
So Eagle Summit, the Eagle Summit I know is out the Steese Highway for the Yukon Quest. I think that's what you might be talking about. And that road is maintained, goes out to Circle and accesses. Yeah, a lot of people hunt out that way. And so if that's what she's talking about, yeah, that is maintained, but nasty storms do come in, and the road gets closed sometimes. And I actually do have an Eagle Summit story. I was a sports writer in Fairbanks for 5 or 6 years, and one of my assignments was to cover the Yukon Quest sled dog race for three times, which is 1,000 miles from between Whitehorse and Fairbanks. It's not as well known as the Iditarod Trail race, but it's sort of a tougher version, fewer checkpoints, and nastier weather, colder weather. And anyways, Eagle Summit is one of the toughest spots on the whole Yukon Quest Trail, and you can actually hike out there. So I went out there with another reporter and hiked about 2 miles out to this spot. It was about 20 below and got out there to get our story. And thankfully had some goggles because it was blowing and really nasty, but it was really awesome to see the mushers tackle this big summit. But and I've hiked out there a bit, but not a great place to run. So
Yeah,
hopefully that's
I can't imagine. Yeah, I can't imagine so. So when the mushers are out there and, like, the temperatures and everything's that extreme, like well, I guess real quick, is that extreme to them, or is that just another day in the office for what they're used to?
20 below is pretty manageable, but if you get wind at those and a mountain that you have to send, that can get pretty extreme. There's been some rescues off of Eagle Summit and a lot of people dropping out. And I've gone out there in the summer and like found just like abandoned gear that's like laying on the tundra. And um, people have to like have unloaded their sleds, pushed their sled up to the top of the summit, and then carried their gear. And mushers helping each other out. So that is pretty extreme country for a musher. But 40 below is not uncommon, even 50 below in the Yukon Quest. Yeah, Iditarod, you won't really see that.
Yeah, not so much. I mean, Ditarod's starting more in South Central. I guess it gets a little bit more extreme as you go up. Does the Yukon or does the we're getting off track here, I know, but does the Iditarod, does that go up through Solomon's Blowhole up through the up near Nome, or does that bypass that pass altogether?
Yeah, so that's one of the most extreme parts of the Iditarod race is the Bering Sea coast and the weather that you can have out there. So while there's more checkpoints and it's not as cold, you can have whiteout storms and you could die out in the Iditarod just as well. But it's not. It's in March. More daylight, warmer weather.
Yeah. Well, relatively speaking. Outstanding. So, okay, so we went from the Equinox marathon, and then after that, like, how did the progression go from there? Did you just go looking for another marathon, or what was the progression from there?
Yeah, I mean, I was doing most of the races in Fairbanks, so my running calendar looked a lot different back then than it does now. I was doing pretty much whatever was offered in Fairbanks. So I was doing 10K road races, 5Ks, some trail runs. The Equinox, of course, was the race that I was sort of gearing up for every year in September. So that really turned me into sort of an all-purpose runner. I lived up on Murphy Dome and had trails out there, rolling hills, things I could train on that had a lot of variety. So doing a little bit of everything, which is a lot different than my approach now. Now I really don't enjoy pavement. I stick pretty much all to trails and mountains. I don't run as much in winter as I used to when I lived in Fairbanks. I ski a lot more. So it was a progression, but back in those days, it was yeah a little bit of everything.
Yeah, yeah. So with all the races that you've done, then, um, and obviously you've gone and done the 100-mile races, and really it sounds like everything in between. Were there any, like, what I would call, like, close call encounters where it's like, that could have gone sideways really bad, or that did go sideways really bad? It really just stands out to you?
Yeah, I've taken some bad falls, especially in mountain and trail races. It doesn't matter whether you're a novice or a quote unquote expert. You're going to take a few falls. It's really easy to catch a toe and down you go. You sort of learn to fall and hopefully just roll out of it. But I had one bad fall in a race called the Matanuska Peak Challenge, which is considered one of the probably the toughest mountain race in Alaska. It goes up and down Lazy Mountain and then Matanuska Peak. It's in near Palmer in Matanuska Valley, and
Yeah,
it's
that
about
I mean,
9,000.
I've gone and done it a couple of times. That trail is absolutely no joke. I mean, yeah, I mean, for those of you that haven't been there yet, I mean, the tons of brush kind of crowding in on you. You've got this super steep grade going all the way up. Once you get up above timberline, I mean, there's going to be you're at least going to be able to see around. Chances are you're going to have a lot of breeze going on, a lot of wind. And I mean, the issue too is like once your muscles have gotten used to going up at this level, and then suddenly you turn around and start going down, like that can do bad thing. Well, it can do painful things to like your calves. You're going down too. So yeah, that race is no joke. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, so what happened to me, it was the first time I'd done it. It had rained a bit, and the top 1,000 feet of the mountain are boulders, really. You're sort of picking through, which isn't too bad going up. Um, but then coming down, you're like hopscotching these boulders or jumping down between them. And I just slipped on one of them. And I went head over heels. It's about the worst possible place you could fall because it's just, if you hit your head or something, it's not really possible to get rescued up there. You couldn't get a helicopter. It'd be really hard to carry someone off the mountain. And I fell. I don't really remember it, but I think I went completely over and miraculously landed sort of feet first. Didn't hit my back. Didn't hit my head. A friend saw it happen and thought there was going to be like me with a split open head and needing rescue. And I was unscathed but terrified and sort of went into survival mode for the next half hour until I get down from the boulders in the mountain. And then everything was fine. And I lost a few spots while I was running slow and scared, and then went right back into race mode. But that was pretty scary. And these races, there are spots where you just can't afford to fall. Mount Marathon's another one when you're running through the creek with water all around you and ledges and drop offs and blunt trauma. If you fall, you got to be really careful, but you can't be thinking about, well, I can't fall, because then you might. So that's part of the appeal, though, is the danger of some of these races, and I've been lucky to not have anything serious happen.
Yeah, I mean, it happens though. Like, I mean, it's very easy to do. Like, even if you're an experienced runner, like sometimes you just have dumb luck. Like, I remember even just Crow Pass, but Crow Pass, and that's a race going from Girdwood, and then it goes through the mountains and it goes to the other town of Eagle River, and it's like a good solid. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's a 10,000 foot climb, like in those first couple of miles. Like, does that sound about right?
No, it's about 2,000, but
2,000. Okay,
about
it's close.
30 to 60 minutes, but it's relentlessly uphill.
Yeah, yeah. So you get that, and then I mean, you're pretty much on a slow descent down into the valley, and then you do the Eagle River like river crossing, which I mean, when you're crossing it, I'm about 6'1", and it was like all the way up to like my hip, like getting across. Then you've got a fast current, and I mean that water's glacier melt off. So I mean, it's pretty freezing. But I remember once getting on top of the summit or top of the pass and going, okay, well, it's all easy from here. Start picking my way down the rocky trail, and we got to like this. So you probably know exactly what I'm talking about, but it's like this a combination of a boulder field, and it had like grass growing on it as well. And like I came around like one of those corners, I'm just kind of in my own zone, not really paying attention as much. And there was a piece of like brush just draped over this rock. I didn't see it, and then like full force just bashed my knee right up against that rock. And that was within like the first 4 or 5 miles of like this 23-mile race. And I was like, I might be done. This might be it.
So did you turn around and go back to the trailhead, or did you gimp your way through it?
I just gimped my way through it and made it work. But yeah, it was yeah. It was I made it work. I mean, let's put it this way, by the end of the race, like the knee was the least of my aches and pains. So that's
That,
Crow Pass though.
that's a race I direct now. And, that's a big part of our approach is just personal responsibility. We do have a safety plan. We have some things in effect. If people have problems, we have mandatory gear. If you're reduced to walking and get cold, you need to have a windbreaker, hat, gloves, things like that. But a lot can go wrong out there, and really, that's the most common injury is just popping an ankle or banging a knee or something, and people are expected to tough it out. Get some help out a fellow runner if they need it. But once you're sort of halfway, you're committed. Um, but that is, Alaska has a lot of epic races like this, and it's a lot different than lower 48 races that have Crow Pass. The trail is unmarked. There's no aid stations, and but that's part of the excitement of it. But
Yeah.
people are really expected to take care of themselves and each other, and a lot can go wrong. But we've been fortunate to, we do have a plan to help people if necessary.
Right. Well, I mean, there was one part in the race. Yeah, I mean, this makes me laugh in retrospect. They had some trail helpers that were out there, like giving out snacks to people, and like I was so punch drunk. Like at this point in the race, like I thought these people that were like well dressed and no sign of fatigue were like part of the race, and I was like trying to tell them the direction they needed to go to to get done with the trail. But it's like, dude, like how punch drunk are you to to think those people are out there just lost on the boulder field? So
Yeah,
yeah,
and then
it
there's
was
the river
I gotta say
crossing.
it was yeah, I gotta say it was a pretty well managed race. Like I can't imagine from a logistics side how taxing that can be trying to put on an event that's over such rugged terrain and over nearly 23 miles of it.
Yeah, that's one of the big challenges of directing races in the backcountry. We have a repeater set up, a mountain repeater, which enables us to communicate through VHF radio. But really, you're not on your own. There's other racers out there, and we do have a few safety personnel, but um, it's not like you can just find a nearby road and catch a ride out or anything. You're committed. Um, and it's part of the, I really enjoy that aspect of directing races in the backcountry is, finding competent volunteers and coming up with a good plan. And we don't just let anybody sign up. You have to have qualifications to make sure that you're qualified to do the race. But it's really satisfying to finish an event like that. And a lot of people start out with easier events and then build up to these 20 to 30 mile backcountry races. But Alaska really has a calendar full of something for everyone from short 4 mile easy-ish trail runs to 100 miles and more rugged terrain. So
Right,
Alaska's
right.
great for that to get everyone involved.
Yep. So we do have another question here from Krista. So what is your diet in that lifestyle there? And I'm assuming she's talking about long distance training.
Yeah, I don't have too strict of a diet. I eat reasonably healthy. We cook most of our own foods. Don't eat out a lot. Don't eat fast food. But I'm not super rigid. I'll have a burger now and then, and just try to have a balanced diet. I don't refrain from having sweets or other things, but eat pretty healthy. I have a metabolism that sort of burns through anything. I can eat whatever I want, but so I eat a lot of calories when I'm training. Anywhere from 10 to 20 hours a week, but I'm not super strict about it. And during races, if I have the gut for it, I'll eat, especially longer races. I'll eat real food out there. I'll pack a burrito or something. If there's potatoes at the aid stations, salted potatoes, just a good mixture of salt and sugar, but just a balanced diet, and make sure I have a beer or two every night too. So
Of course, of course. I mean, that's a given. So, from your perspective, can you rank kind of maybe your top three most challenging or difficult races that you've personally run?
yeah, hmm. Well, I mentioned Matt Peak, the one where I took the boulder fall, and that's definitely one of the hardest. Just how much vertical climbing there is in a short distance. Crow Pass, all these races have have their own challenges. Crow Pass has not as much climbing, but a lot of technical terrain. It's got a 50-yard glacial river crossing that can be chest deep in the middle of it and really frigid, and tall grass with chunky rocks at your feet that you can't really see. So that's one race that's sort of been my nemesis. It might not be the hardest race out there, but it's been the hardest one for me to get right. Um,
Yeah, and I've noticed like it seems like the women do pretty well on Crow Pass. Um, I've got some theories on that. Like I think it's legitimately if you're more nimble on your feet on Crow Pass, you're probably going to have a better chance just because I mean, it's such a technical kind of a trail. Like I don't know if that's just me or that theory sounds right, but
they
that's
might be a little
just
smarter in their pacing. Guys tend to be a little more reckless, a little more taking risks, and probably going out too hard and then feeling it, the last couple hours. And I've found that women tend to pace things a little bit more realistically than guys sometimes. So that might be one reason for women's success in some of these longer races. And the longer you go, the less of a physical difference there is between men and women. And you're seeing women winning races outright, the longer you go, which is awesome to see. And um, I've seen women go by me in some races and cheered them on. It's awesome to see strong women like that.
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I remember in Crow Pass, and I'm coming at it with the mindset of the collegiate runner used to be able to just throw down some ridiculously fast times, and we had like the near the end of the race, like I think it was three or four women that like passed me, and at first I was like, oh, okay, I need to go with them. Like, come on, you can't let that happen. And then I stopped and thought about it for a minute. I was like, dude, they started 30 minutes after we did. Like, on time right now, like, they are way ahead of you, so if you're just trying to do this for time, there's literally no reason to try at this point. They're way gone.
Yeah, that was in the pandemic where we had to do smaller waves, so we did that was a mitigation measure. But normally, men and women all start together and get to race head to head.
Yeah,
I'd
yeah,
say the
well,
hardest race I ever did, if talking about difficult races, is an event called the Wilderness Classic, which is another truly Alaskan kind of event. There's a summer and a winter version, and I've never done the summer one. It's anywhere from 100 to 200 miles overland in the summer. And I guess I'm a little scared of that race. There's very little sleep. You're having to route find. And I was worried it was going to destroy me so much that it would impact my ability to do a lot of the other races that I love in the summer. So I haven't done the summer one, but I did the winter classic with my partner Christy one year, and that year was 200 miles from McCarthy and little hamlet of McCarthy in the Wrangell St. Elias Mountains to near Tok, Alaska, Tok Cutoff, that area. And the race took you through the wilderness on skis for 200 miles. Sort of choose your own adventure. There's various different ways you could go, maybe 20 or 30 people. And it's completely or self-supported. You got to carry all your own gear. Started out with packs that weighed over 40 pounds. And yeah, you're winter camping, and a huge challenge. Took us 6 days, but really satisfying to finish that. And be honest, my girlfriend Christy is a lot better winter camper, and is a lot easier time than me staying warm. So we made a good team, sharing responsibilities. She sort of carried us through a lot of that, especially the camp chores. But yeah, it's pretty intense out there, an event that long. But
Yeah, I mean, once you start getting like I mean, you've got the regular Alaska long distance stuff, and then you add winter on top of that, and that just turns it into a completely different animal at that point.
you know,
I mean, it's almost like like Crow Pass, Kasugi, like all those are like long distance endurance events, and then you add like the winter on top of it, and it's like, well, it's a survival kind of a thing.
you know, and you got to be smart because a lot can go wrong, and you need to be able to problem solve as you go, which is part of the appeal as well. To take the challenges. There's always that's part of the reason I do ultra events, is to discover what's going to go wrong and how I'm going to react to it and how I'm going to solve that problem, whether it's blisters or getting cold or taking a fall or just losing the mental game, or there's just so much that can happen. And in a short race, there's less to deal with. But once you're out there for 2 to 24 hours, there's always some new challenge that's going to get thrown at you.
Yeah, I mean, if you have a weakness, like the race is gonna find it. That's just how it goes out there. At least I've noticed.
Yeah, and even if it might not even be your weakness, if I mean, it could be a wildlife encounter or just something random, and you need to be prepared for it and take measures to avoid the bear or the moose or whatever it is. So
Right, right. So do you have any like you've done spent a lot of time out there on the trails, and I mean, you took that nasty fall on Matt Peak. Are there any other like really like cool, fun racing, well, not fun, but eventful racing stories you like to remember and tell
um,
people about?
yeah, I mean, I've been pretty fortunate to not have anything go disastrously wrong. It wasn't a race story, but it was as much anymore. I mean, I take enjoyment out of just recreating and training for these events as much as the race is sort of the payoff, and the training is that builds the foundation that enables you to do it. So you spend a lot more time training and just spending time out in the country than you do racing. And but I did break my leg on a snowshoe outing a couple years ago. Right out the door in my neighborhood in Bear Valley, which is in South Anchorage on the hillside, where I do a lot of my training and really love. Just it's hard to beat just going right out the door for a run or a hike or a ski. And um, this was December. It was 7 degrees out. I did have a little bit of gear with me. I had a puffy jacket, and um, I didn't have a phone with me because my phone tends to not to die in the cold. And I wasn't that far from the house, but that doesn't mean you can't get into trouble. So there's sort of a false sense of security. But when you are close, like I could practically see my house. But the first mistake I made was I just going snowshoeing in the first place. So I went up the mountain. Probably should have been hiking or skiing through some of this country. We had just got a bunch of fresh snow, and I wanted to snowshoe out a trail up on the ridge where I spent a lot of time. Um, and then I just got lazy, and I didn't feel like taking the snowshoes off. And up high, it's on the ridge. It can get pretty wind blown and rocky. So when I was in this rocky area, I needed to just take the snowshoes off and hike through that. And but I was just stubborn, didn't really want to deal with taking the snowshoes off and putting them back on maybe. And was just hiking through a rocky section, thought I had it under control, and just stepped on a hidden rock. And snowshoe is a platform, so the platform and the snowshoe sort of cantilevered on this rock, and then my leg sort of torqued the opposite direction, and just that force was enough to break my fibula. And
Dude, that's oh god, that's not
I
good.
one, it was like next level pain, as you can imagine. Just getting the snowshoes off was one of the worst things as part of that, because I had to sort of tighten it up to release it. So I'm putting pressure on that area, and I wasn't sure if I'd broken the ankle, broken the leg, sprained it really badly. I just knew it hurt like hell, and I had to get off the mountain, and it was 7 degrees and dark out. Um, had my dogs with me, try to just stay calm, and I was up near the top of the ridge, so I had about 1,500 vertical feet, and tried to weight it, and wasn't really able to even hobble on it. But I was like pretty close to this gully that I was aiming towards, and the gully doesn't have rocks in it; it's all snow, and it's pretty steep. So I figured, well, if I can just get to the gully, I can just sort of butt slide down that. And that was one of my saving graces. So I was able to slide on my butt down a lot of the vertical that I needed to get off the mountain. But then once it sort of flattened out, I didn't have that gravity anymore. So I mean, you do what you got to do, right? Sort of a survival situation at that point.
Yeah,
So I
did you just army crawl it in?
yeah, then I started crawling, and then my knees got pretty cold. So then the next most efficient thing was to sort of barrel roll down the mountain, which is I was sort of laughing at myself because it's pretty comical to be rolling down the mountain. My dogs jumping all over me. They thought it was pretty fun, and I could see the house that I needed to get to, which was not mine, but the nearest house. It was about a mile away, and it took me about an hour and a half to get there. I just stayed calm. Um, I was adrenaline was kicking pretty good, and I didn't. I was comfortable enough. I had enough clothes with me. I just kept moving, and um, I used my snowshoes sort of as a crutch once I got to this road the snowy road that would bring me to that house, and I sort of hobbled and crawled my way there and knocked on the door, and of course it was the middle of COVID, but at that point they let me in, and I called my girlfriend, and she came and got me, and pretty emotional once I knew I was safe because if I would have been a few miles further out or in rougher terrain and had to spend the night out there, who knows how it would have ended up, but um,
Yeah, because I mean, I mean, you're one of the most experienced people out there, and that really is just kind of an example that, I mean, really anything can happen that you don't expect. So, yeah, holy
yes,
cows, that's and I mean, it's like right outside your back door. Like that's not the place you would have thought that something like that would have happened.
yeah, and it was a combination really of just bad decisions and bad luck. And once it happened, then it was just like, okay, keep your head on straight, and you got yourself into this, get yourself out of it. So, um, I mean, I went up that 3 months later, my leg was healed, and I went up and skied that same run, and sort of had to get the monkey off my back, and jump back on the horse and go back to that same area. And um, I just make sure when I go out that I have enough gear, and if I can, I bring a phone, but I still have that same phone that dies in the cold. So, um, and I don't hesitate to go out alone. I'm often. I mean, sometimes I have friends or girlfriend, or I always have often have my dogs with me. But um, yeah, it hasn't really. I mean, it's kept me more aware of like, okay, if I make a mistake here, this could be bad. So, I think about what I'm doing a little bit more after that, and don't just sort of blindly charge off. But an accident can happen anywhere, even when you haven't really made a mistake.
Yeah, no, 100%. So another question we have from the comments section. So have you had any extreme stories with wildlife at the racing events or during exercises?
Yeah, I got a few bear stories. um, Turning an arm trail
Those are the
seems to
best.
be where most of the bear encounters, at least racing, have happened for me, both racing and training. It's a 7 mile trail, right along Turning an Arm, so between Anchorage and Girdwood. Spectacular trail, but a lot of it's forested, and the bears definitely frequent that area. Um, so you got to be really aware. I always carry bear spray when I'm there. Even during the race, I'll carry bear spray, which you're seeing more and more. But I guess I was racing one time, probably about 8 or 9 years ago, and was actually off the front. There's over 100 people doing it, but I was leading it on my own, so I didn't have anyone around me. Which generally, when you see bears, you want to be in a group of people, and the bear's not going to charge a group of people, and generally you see them and they run off, and you make noise, and there's certain protocol you follow. But I turned this corner, and there's a grizzly bear, like probably, I don't know, 100 feet away from me,
Oh
and
god.
I screeched to a halt, and it's definitely sees me. It's right in the middle of the trail, and it sort of takes a few steps towards me, and I just make sure that it sees me. I'm making noise and I'm waving my arms, and the last thing you want to do is run away. So I'm just, but it takes a lot of willpower not to run either. And so I just slowly backed up, but I needed to get some distance from them, and you sort of want to remove the threat in the bear's mind, which is to get out of their view. Um, but you hope they're not. You don't want to trigger a chase instinct either. That's why you don't run. So I backed
Right.
up around the corner, try to put more distance between myself and the bear, and then within like a minute or two or three other runners showed up. So now we had a group. We also had to go back around that same corner, and which was a blind corner, and hope the bear wasn't like right there. Also, it's a race, so like we weren't
Eventually,
gonna.
you're gonna have to do it, yeah.
Yeah, so we sort of gathered up, made a ton of noise, grabbed a big rock, and went around the corner and peeked there, and it wasn't there. And then we just kept going and didn't see it again. I'm sure it went off the trail and heard us hooting and hollering and stayed away. But I tell you, it was hard to race after that with that and fresh in my mind.
No, well,
Um,
I mean, even just like the other morning, I was, out running. It was like really dark. It's around like 6, 5:30, something like that. And I've got this headlamp on that's letting me see the road and all that. And I'm going along. I've got the earpods in. I'm listening to just some podcast, and I like hear something off to the side, and I like, look over real quick, and I see like this, just the eyes of this moose just darting right in front of me across the road. And yeah, I mean, not a bear or something like that, but yeah, that really makes like your heart rate just shoot through your chest for a second there. Cause I mean, they're big animals. And actually, in some instances, I'm actually more afraid of a moose than a bear.
yeah, you're more likely to see a moose, and especially if a moose is with the calf. The moose can charge, and I've heard of people doing ring around the rosy with the tree, and people have gotten stomped, and so you definitely need to just be aware of the wildlife out there. Like I said, I carry bear spray. I try to make noise. I avoid certain areas, that certain times of the year. The Turning in Arm Trail in like August, late July, August, when the brush is really grown high, I won't go there because you don't have good sight lines. I'd rather be up on a ridge where you can see. Um, so you just try to take some mitigation measures to just avoid wildlife encounters.
Yeah. Have you ever spent a lot of time running along the Agglutina Lake?
A little bit,
Yeah.
not too much.
Like, yeah, I mean, I used to do quite a few like long runs out there during the summertime, but oh man, last time I did that, I'm really surprised I didn't get attacked, honestly, because I mean, I was seeing tons of sign of black bear, and like I could hear them like right next to me in the brush, and it like the brush is like super thick, you can't really see very far. in any direction. You've got all these turns, so it's easy to like just come up on something suddenly. And I mean, I was just like yelling at the top of my lungs, like at the end of the run, like my voice was just like hoarse, like I just joined the military or something. It was
Well,
pretty bad, but that was such a creepy feeling just being able to hear them like snuffling in the brush right next to you and, trying not to, to keep your cool and not do something that's gonna trigger that chase reflex. But yeah, if we're talking about recommendations for long runs, I would not recommend a gluten a lake during the summertime. Winter, go for it, but winter, summertime, not by yourself. Me personally.
yeah, this last year for the Turning an Arm race, again, we had a moose that actually pretty much shut down the race or temporarily halted it. Where there was a cow. This was a black bear this time, not a grizzly, which makes you feel a little better. But it had a cow with, or had a cub with it, and the cub, actually two cubs, they ran up in a tree, and the mom was at the base of the tree, and again, it was right off the trail, and the bear was right in the trail, and I wasn't at the front that time. I was a little bit further back, but the leaders had stopped, and pretty soon we had about 50 runners, and the bear wasn't going anywhere. And we ended up after like 10 minutes, the choices were just stop the race and go back to the trailhead, or we've got a safe group. Let's just bushwhack through the woods, or take a wide arc around it, and rejoin on the other side of the trail and keep going. That's what we did. But yeah, so just got to get creative about it. But sometimes it's just you don't want to take any risks if there's wildlife in the trail, and if I'm training, I'll just turn around and go find another trail and just not take any risks. It's not worth it.
Yeah. No, 100%. So another quick question here. So I heard moose can be aggressive up there too. Just a thought. I've been using packet charger plugged into my phone in extreme cold in Montana, Wyoming, Rockies. Of course, I have no idea how long those will last in Alaska. Have you guys ever used those? You know, personally, not me, but it sounds like a really good idea.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with packet charger either.
Now, all right. So let me just get to this question real quick here too. And so in wintertime, are you running with a headlamp? What kind are you using? So um, I guess for me personally, I just went and found something from Walmart. I know this isn't the best gear in the world ever, but usually I'm not out there for hours on end. And if I am, I'm going to be running during the time when we have sunlight. So, I just have like I've got a couple. One is just like, the kind where you can just plug in some AAA batteries and you're good to go. And I've got another one that I can charge up also. The thing about the one that has to get charged, you do have to make sure that it stays charged, and if it's really cold outside, that's gonna drain the battery really fast, and then you're just left alone out in the dark. So that's not optimal. I've had that happen a couple times already this winter, and it's not the end of the world because where I'm at, I mean, there's not a whole lot of city lights, which that sounds counterintuitive, but the advantage is that I've got like all the stars and the moon right up overhead, and those are really bright. So I can usually pick my way through the dark with the snow pretty well with that. Um, Matthias, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I'm probably the wrong person to ask as far as having a quality headlamp. But I've used Princeton Tech is one brand I've used. I've used Black Diamond. Really, you can have as much light as you want these days. I mean, I'll be out on a trail and have a fat tire biker come up upon me that has like more light than a car headlamp. Um, you know, so the headlamps have come a long way. Some they're a little heavier if you have like a battery pack or something with you, but you can get as much as much light as you want. I prefer to not have this blindingly bright light, but so, but then again, I need to up my game. I'm going to be doing a 300-mile ski race on the Iditarod Trail in late February, early March, where I'm going to be doing a lot of travel in the dark. So I'll be researching headlamps and have something that'll put out a lot more light and last a lot longer. But there's a lot of quality options that they've come a long way in the last 10, 15 years.
Yeah, you're gonna have to let me know what you use because I mean, I'm probably not gonna be running like my long distance stuff. I'm training for the summertime, so I'm probably not gonna need it as much during the obviously during the winter months because it's sun 24/7. But I feel like I should probably upgrade my headlamp game at some point here. So, guess a couple more questions here. So, just with all your experience with the race directing at this point, have you what have been like some of the biggest like challenging experiences you've had to deal with? Because I mean, I imagine everyone's got the plan, we've got backup plans, but I mean, things obviously don't work out exactly the way we plan on them going. So, what have kind of been some situations that have come up that you had to deal with as a race director?
Yeah, well, COVID wasn't much fun for race directing. Between canceling races and mitigating races. Hopefully that's mostly behind us now, but that presented a lot of challenges. Just how do we put on a safe race and um, with reasonable mitigation measures without going over the top, but still being safe. So, and then just coming up with the plan, communicating it. That was a unique situation. I touched on a little bit. Just some of these races that I direct are the logistics of these backcountry races are really really challenging to put together a good safety plan and have good volunteers um, and have set people up for success, communicate well of what to expect and what kind of gear they need and things like that. We're not everyone is super experienced out there, but we want to make sure that people have this enough experience and skill set to do well. These town races, it's you don't need that experience, but these backcountry races, you definitely do. So that's something we work pretty hard at because if something goes wrong out there, you need to be able to problem solve, and often it's personal responsibility of figuring out. We can't be everywhere to go rescue you, and it shouldn't be on us to rescue people. We don't guarantee that this is a safe race and nothing will go wrong. So
Yeah, I
that,
mean, that's one thing that I really did appreciate with running Crow Pass that you directed was that was very clear from the beginning. I mean, you guys had like the video that we had to go watch too, like showing exactly like where all the cutoffs are, and I mean, we try to try to make it as easy to follow as possible, but for the most part, it's a pretty unmarked trail, and you can definitely get turned around and get lost. But I mean, you guys definitely went literally sometimes the extra mile to try to make that happen and make it clear and easy for people to follow. But so if you had any, I guess, big injuries or any like, oh shoot moments from your directing career so far?
no, knock on wood. There have been, I won't, stories for other days, but there have been some accidents. I mean, Mount Marathon is an extreme event every year. We had
And
someone fall
yeah, and for
and
people who
break their
might
hip
not be
actually.
aware, yeah, and for people who might not be aware of what Mountain Marathon is, can you kind of explain what that is for folks who are coming in from out of state?
Yeah, it starts in the town of Seward. It's on the 4th of July. It's been going on since going on 100 years now, and it's sort of the Super Bowl of Alaska events, along with the Iditarod. Extremely popular both for the racers. Everyone wants to do it, and those who don't want to do it want to watch it. But you start in town, you run to the base of mountain called Mount Marathon, and run 3,000 vertical feet or hike 3,000 vertical feet up to the top, and then turn right around. And most of that vertical gain is in less than a mile, 9/10 of a mile, and then turn around and go straight down this extremely steep mountain. There's a lot of loose rock. It's called scree or shale that enables you to run down a 40-degree pitch of rock. Um, so it's an extreme event. It's high danger. And then once you get sort of through the scree area, you're running through this active creek still down the mountain with water running around all around you and ledges. And that's a place I mentioned earlier where you just can't afford to fall. And as a race director, I really worry about blunt trauma from a fall in that area. If that's not enough, then there's a cliff at the bottom to negotiate. And I direct it now, but I still run it every year. And without fail, once I get back off the mountain and onto the road, I exhale that I've made it safely that far at least. Because there have been, not in the couple of years I've been directing it, but there have been some bad accidents. And it just goes with the territory. It doesn't deter people from doing it or the popularity of it. But the key is to train and be prepared for it. We have a rule that you have to have done the mountain in training from start to finish before, and it's honor system, but you have to sign off on that. So you don't just show up and wing it.
Yeah, I mean, I've not run it, but I mean, mountain marathon, from everything I've been told, is really not a race you just roll out of bed and show up for. It's not really the fun little 5K race you do on Saturday morning last minute.
But
Like
as
the
visitors,
the
for anyone that's interested in Alaska, it's a heck of an experience. It's a great party. Come on down and watch. And once you watch it, if you're mountain and trail oriented, you'll want to do it too. It's really hard to get into because there's much more demand for entering the race than there is spots available. So, which creates
Yeah.
challenges as a race director because a lot of people want to do it, and we have a lot of rules for qualification and so on.
Yeah, and I think, we were talking before, you mentioned you guys made some adjustments, to, adjustments for the enrollment for the race, so you wanna talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, basically, got to the point where the race had become so popular, and our previous qualification rules, sort of once you were in the club, once you had done it and finished, initially all you do is finish, and then you would get your spot for the next year. And then we made it a little bit harder, in the top 225 of 300 or so racers would keep their spot for the next year. And through these rules, um, everyone was coming back, and there were very few spots for new people to do the race through the lottery, and the lottery odds were down to like 2% or so, which is just not really fair to people trying year after year after year to try to get in the race and having almost no chance to get in, while other people who were fortunate enough to get in once got to race it every year. So we changed the rule a couple of years ago. Still pretty generous in my opinion compared to a lot of popular races that are just a straight lottery for everyone every year. But now you have to be in the top 50% of your age group to requalify. So it's opened up a lot more spots for the lottery for new people to get in. But it was controversial because people that were used to making the cut now weren't making the cut and had entered the lottery and lost their spot. And so you're never going to please everyone, but you do what you can for
No.
what's best for the race and to give as many people an opportunity as possible.
No, yeah, I mean, I totally agree. You're just never gonna make everybody happy because, I mean, you have a limited number of spots, number of people you can safely have on that mountain and on that trail, and I guess the only other option is we could always run it multiple times and do, like, heats where you have to, like, run it, one day, qualify, and then you make it to, like, the race the day after, but, like, that's the only other option. If you want to run it 2 or 3 days in a row, go right ahead. But
Yeah,
again,
if you want to find 300 volunteers for me for the next day.
solid. I'm sure that that wouldn't give you any logistical problems at all either.
Yeah, so we have a men's race, a women's race, a juniors race, a parade in the middle of it. It's a long, long, exciting day, but it's all on the 4th of July. So
Yeah. And I mean, Seward's a great place to be on the 4th. So yeah, it's nothing there you don't like. Let's see here. So I've got one more question. Let me see. What kind of boots and coats are best you have been satisfied with up there in the harshest winter months? Um, I'm gonna let you start with that one.
I don't know about any particular brand. Just having good quality gear and layering and being smart about how you use your gear, learning how to use it. Um, I mean, frankly, a big danger is being too warm, wearing too much, getting sweaty at below zero, and then getting cold because of it. So um, having, I try to carry a warm jacket in my pack, but I don't put everything on right at the start and get, example, I went up Bird Ridge Mountain this past Sunday, and it was not cold. It was 38 and raining at the base, and 32 and snowing hard at halfway up the mountain. So trying to not get, trying not to overheat, trying not to get too wet, having some spare gear, having some fluids with you, something warm, just having a variety of gear that'll keep you safe. And then just practicing with it and experimenting. Um, some people burn hotter than others. I burn really cold, so I need more clothes than other people. So yeah, that would be my recommendations.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all of that. I recently just started kind of upgrading my running gear and stuff that I'll go do stuff in the winter. Because up till now, I mean, it's just been straight cotton and just multiple layers up of that, stuff like that, which it works. There's a time and a place for it, but problem with it is, I mean, you do start sweating very fast, and then, I mean, that you get cold very quickly with the wind chill. So it's more expensive. One product
They
line, I
say,
guess you can say. Yep, go ahead.
I was going to say they say cotton kills, so I would opt for
Yeah.
synthetic layers over cotton. Um, yeah, and then for like boots, for like biking in the cold, they have 45 North is one company that has really warm winter boots. There's sort of some Alaska specific. Seems like Alaska's brought about some hardier gear. And then you can have, like, for skiing, you can have over boots that'll go, insulated over boots, which are another extra layer that'll help keep your feet warm. Um, Hand warmers, foot warmers. There's lots of strategies you can use to try to stay warm.
Yeah, and I mean, we haven't really gotten too cold yet this winter. Like I've got the gear, and I mean, I've went and experimented, just bit the bullet, went to REI, the local place to be if you're looking at outdoor gear, and dropped some good money on some smart wool. And I mean, that's been working pretty good so far. But I mean, then again, it's only gone down to like maybe 0 degrees or something like that where I currently live and run in. So yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it seems to be working pretty well right now. We'll see what I'm saying when it's like -20. All right. So we got one more question here from me. And if anyone else has any questions, then go ahead and drop them in the chat. This is kind of your final call. So, can you talk a little bit about what the racing and the running community is like up here in Alaska? I mean, you are very uniquely positioned to really kind of talk about that. So, what is it you would say that the community is like up here?
Yeah, it's amazing. It's super inclusive. If you look at our events calendar, there's really something for everyone. From short trail races to long mountain races and everything in between. There's a group called the Alaskan Mountain Runners. I'm on the board of directors for them. We have a website, we have a calendar which can give you some ideas um, for events if you're interested in trying out some trail or mountain races. Um, one thing we are lacking is sort of having group outings, and I get that question quite a bit. If I want to join a group of other people doing this, what are the options? And it's something maybe we'd like to add in the future. Have some like meetup events um, where people can meet people and meet at a trailhead and go do a trail or mountain and then socialize afterwards. Um, so that's something we'd like to work on. There are some mountain running classes you can take, like Alaska Endurance Project is one, but they're not free, like events through Alaska Mountain Runners might be. But yeah, a lot of it is just showing up at an event and meeting other people and making some friends and um, getting out there and doing it. There's limitless opportunities and places to go.
Yeah, and I mean, as you mentioned, it's a really inclusive community up here, and I mean, I can't think of a better place to make friends quickly than in some kind of a long distance race in Alaska. Because I mean, after you've spent a couple hours with somebody on a trail and you've kind of gone through all the falls and the bumps and the blood, sweat, and tears along the way, then I mean, you're pretty much got a friend for life after that. So.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's all the questions that we have here. Matthias, do you have any final thoughts or um, any other plugs you want to give? We're definitely going to be putting a link to your book in the description section as soon as this is published um, on YouTube, and we'll certainly give a link for any other places you want us to direct folks to. But is there anything else you want to talk about?
I don't think so. This was fun, Jamin. Appreciate the opportunity.
Hey, well, thank you very much, and looking forward to jumping into some races with you here in the near future. I'm pretty sure you're going to kick my butt in the long distance stuff here again, but it'll be fun anyway. But everyone else, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.